Hey everybody, my name is Silas, and I am here to talk about my own theory of what's underneath Dolly's hat from the show Ed and Eddie. You guys might be thinking, oh no, not another one of these weird theorists. But keep in mind, it's my own theory of the years that I gathered up from my past, and just don't judge me. I'm doing this off of a script that I made. So let's get started, shall we? When Double D was a toddler, his parents were absent and busy and didn't always have the time to check on him. He was able to take care of himself at a young age, yet wasn't able nor allowed to use any sharp or dangerous objects. Cutting hair was something he didn't try, and slowly it grew longer. When his parents noticed this, they decided to cut it before going to work. Though in a haste after they left, Doughty noticed the damage and decided to fix his hair himself, but without success. His parents did order him to go to a barber shop right after their own attempt, rightfully assuming they didn't do a great job. But Doughty was keen on the idea of going outside and showing his hairdo to anyone. Instead, he did it with a ski hat the same color as his real hair. Ed's parents never asked any questions afterwards, but both had their own reasons for it. Since Doubledy's mother was always fond of his long hair, unlike his father, Doubledy decided not to touch the right half of at the back of his head, which was the left half, was already cut off by his parents, which are the three hairs that you guys see in the show, and made his mother believe he was wearing the hat to hide his intact long hair from his father. In the meantime, he preoccupied his father, believed that the hat was his hair, if only because it had the same color. Over time, Doubledy's hair only got more bushy and tangled up, and cutting it became an impossible feat. On May 21st, 2007, a artist named Vampire Meerkat uploaded her first DeviantArt submission titled Show Yourself Ed, which also was the first drawing to showing off this theory. The drawing did not get any attention, but with the Ed and Eddie Carmel Dawson that was uploaded at YouTube, was originally uploaded on December 17th, 2007, and it did and introduced the theory to most people. Afterwards, two drawings were published that explained how this theory worked. One was on the same day as the theory's original introduction, and another, more detailed submission, showed up on March 16th, 2008, explaining how Double D hid his hair, his reasons for hiding the hairdo from every view, and why certain other known such popular theories didn't work. The reasons of hiding that were listed: not his style, overload of hair could affect an obsession over him similar to what the boys from the show have towards Naz, and troublesome hair. Most reasons argue that dealing with this hairdo was a hassle and for a tidy person like Double D, unbearable to have. The other reason insinuated that the mullet would not be seen as a problem, but as a punk hairstyle that would attract the opposite gender, causing him anxiety and giving him the wrong impression overall. Um, Double D's Kevin outfit from the episode A Boy and Ed was also mentioned and shown what parts of Double D's hairdo matched up with it. A year later, more proof was found that supported and demotivated the theory. It was explained how the mullet worked with certain occasions and scenes in the series, including screenshots why it didn't, followed by why it could be ignored. Unlike the previous submission, This one mentioned Double D's hairpins from Will Work for Ed and used them as Double D's way of fixing his hair into his hat. Rather than his hair just being hat shaped, Double D's Kevin costume may return, and Sarah's lack of reaction when she appeared from under his hat and Ed too many was questioned. Um, Baldness is one of the theories I kind of don't support. Something like that. Hairpins are mainly for people who have something to pin them onto. Everyone's free to assume they simply belong with the other junk Doldy stores in his hat. This kind of reminds me of some Cat in the Hat thing. But then I don't want to get any comments about how all that hair could fit in his hat, which I am probably gonna get once I upload this video. And if Double D is able to pull, and if Double D was able to pull out a whole toolbox out of his hat. Okay, so baldness has always been a common thing in the Ed and Eddie world. It seems to be the most logical theory out there at first glance, but it's unlikely that bald characters like Ed and Eddie would be frightened by it, just like blonde hair. A theory based on a misread interview and opinion that was present on the offline AKA website. How is blonde hair scary and how does it hurt? Alright, the hairpins might be holding his hair flat down onto his head as the characters seemingly don't have neck hairs. The question is where the hair starts and where it ends. Double D may look bald whenever it's pulled back with the pins, making conflicting pictures irrelevant. Still, this almost means that Double D can't store items in his mullet, which argued before, and it raises the question if it's really the mullet itself that frightens Ed and Eddie, or the insane amount of hairpins they subjected to when the hat falls off. This is more or less a summary of the thought process that came with this theory, unlike most fan theories. The mullet was designed and changed over time using these scenes that I have listed off. Like for this, in a DVD interview with Double D, well, the person who does Double D, which I forgot who does the voice, but he stated whatever is underneath Double D's hat shines like 1,000 suns. And here's why. Hairpins, a large amount of these shiny metal pins is probably needed to maintain his hair. Here's another one. Whenever someone picks up Double D by his hat, Double D sometimes holds onto it and other times he doesn't. And here's why. The stiff back vertical piece of his hairdo might escape the pins so now and then, which means the characters are picking him up by his hair. On those occasions, Double D doesn't have to grab the edges of his hat. And Double D once read on a sticky note that his mother left him that she said that he had to wash his hair. An obvious hint that he at least has hair. Though, if Double D's parents aren't aware of what is under his hat themselves, they could be ignored. In the episode Stop Looking Ed, Eddie said "Geez Louise," and Ed said "Cool." It has to be shocking yet impressive. In the Big Picture show, Eddie says, "My eyes, they're burning," laughing. Ed says, "Does it hurt, Double D?" Messy hair alone doesn't fulfill the scene, but a giant wrapped up tangle may. This may also apply to scars or extreme wounds. Though the question is how serious it could be if Ed and Eddie ended up grinning about their friend's pain, which that's just rude, obviously. Another possibility could be that the hairpins themselves look like a heavy weight and could cause pain. In the episode A Boy and His Ed, Double D at least 3 extra hairs compared to Eddie. Double D already has more hair, making the bald theory even less likely. And here's another one. Double D always wears a shower cap whenever showering or bathing in some of the episodes you guys probably seen from the seasons. There must be something worth covering when going to the shower. Again, this could also apply to extreme wounds. Alright, so here comes to the segment that's going to be a little bit longer, which here's some of the theories that I've gathered up from the past of me just watching this series. The first one, theory of baldness, there's no proof that demotivates Double D might be close to bald, though it is impossible to claim that this is the secret hidden under his head. As most of the male characters in Ed and Eddie lack hair, it wouldn't make sense that Ed and Eddie would be scared or amazed by Double D's baldness. He may very well be bald, but it's not the burden he's carrying. Alright, next theory. The theory of cornrows slash dreadlocks. This theory originated from the expired online game Lunchroom Rumble at the Cartoon Network website. When winning the game as Double D, he would throw his head up in the air, showing the player who's playing a few strands of hair of what's underneath Double-D's head. But this theory is unlikely because as not only does it not explain Ed and Eddie's reactions, the game was made by the Cartoon Network studio themselves without the input of AK Cartoon and the creator of Ed and Eddie, which is Danny Antonucci. Next theory. The theory of long hair, which this theory lacks proof for a reason why it should be considered as an unsolvable problem. Ed and Eddie's reactions don't match the problem, making this theory not credible enough. Alright, next theory. The theory of brain abscess, something like that, scar, etc. With the hints given from the series, this is the one of the more credible theories. Even so, there has to be drawn a line, as Ed and Eddie most likely won't joke about the pail/illness of a friend. Alright, next theory, which is gonna be a long one. The dodgeball theory. This is the theory about the dodgeball accident, and if it is why Double D wears that hat. This theory is though to be true by a good amount of fans. Story. Double D is in Lemonbrook Elementary School and playing dodgeball. He is the best in the team when he was playing against had all the other kids on it. Eventually it came down to Double D and this one other random kid that doesn't have a name that I searched up. The only way Double D could win was by a trick shot. The other kid dodged it, that was on the other side, and the ball ricocheted. When Double D was getting another one to throw it, he looked up and saw the ball coming towards him, so the dodgeball hit him right in the head so hard it wedged into his skull. He had to move to Peach Creek, his hometown's rival town, due to him being so shamed and scarred. And here's some facts that support the theory. Double D has his hat as a toddler when his family moved to Peach Creek, and Double D's hat has been removed only 3 to 4 times, and the first 2 times Ed and Eddie seemed slightly creeped out by it throughout the entire series. In the Big Picture show, Ed asked if it hurt. When Eddie wanted to play dodgeball with Ed, Double D, and Jimmy, and Ed in a half shell, Double D covered his head for a few seconds, then started to cry a little, and take this Ed and shove it. Double D's hat seemed to have deflated as if a ball or something was under it, and the air was released. On the Ed and Eddie Misadventures game manual, it said that kind of theory, or something like that. I never played it. On the Cartoon Network website, it said since the dodgeball incident. Okay, so here's some facts that do not support this theory. If a dodgeball were to hit someone in the head hard enough to be wedged into their skull, it would likely also cause brain damage. And in the show, Double D is presented as very intelligent. And to disprove the thing that I said earlier, Double D could be a savant. A savant is a person who has development delays and or brain injury and is able to display a supreme level of intellect, often considered to be a genius. When Double D is shown entering the cul-de-sac at a young age, possibly like 2 or 3 years old, in one of the episodes in the series, when they were trying to go, when Eddie was trying to explain a story to Ed and Double D of how he got into Jawbreaker, then it ended up somehow through people's other backstories, like Johnny Allen Plank, of remember of the chip that's on there. That led to Kevin about summer vacation of Naz was actually um, huge, and then it led to Rolf's backstory. Then Ed and Eddie somehow ended up in that. Then, well, I don't have to explain the rest if you guys seen the series or that episode. And here's my final theory, the birthmark theory. It is very much so possible that Double D wears his hat in order to mask an oddly shaped birthmark or other condition that was present from birth. If the birthmark was an embarrassing or unusual shape, that would get him made fun of, hence the other Eds, Ed and Eddie, comments in the Big Picture Show, he would, needless to say, want to cover it up. A strange shape would also explain why Ed and Eddie were impressed with it when they first saw it. Holy cow, that just made my brain strain out. I had to pause for a few seconds just so I can get my breath. So, yeah, that concludes my theory of what I think is underneath Dudley's head. So, let me know in the comments below of what you guys out there think of what's underneath his head. So, until next time, bye-bye.